Welcome to the Cum Zone. I mean the Digimon seasonal reviews. Sorry, they're so familiar I get them mixed up. I'm your biased reviewer AJ, and I advise you to check out the introduction video to this retrospect to get some further context. Before we start today's video, that being Digimon Fusion, or its Japanese name Cross Wars, there are a few things I would like to address. This symbol will indicate whenever a story element is altered in Shareverse as to what really happens rather than it being changed in its future anime release. Additionally, I will be using the English dub names and terminology for these reviews. Unlike a lot of other anime communities, most Digimon fans tend to watch the original Japanese dub because it's more serious and faithful to the source material. I call bullshit because majority of American Digimon fans grew up with the English dub, and besides, it's my videos, I make the rules. Another thing I want to address is that I am aware Billiam has made more formal and professional videos of these Digimon seasons. In fact, I recommend checking out his videos so you can hear two different opinions of the same season. There are some things I like that he doesn't, and vice versa. Lastly, I would like to address that this video will be different from the other seasonal reviews, since the main crux of this video will be how Nickelodeon almost killed Digimon in America. This video will be a first-hand account of what really happened, since I saw every misstep the company saw into killing this beloved franchise. And before anybody says this in the comments, yes, I am aware Cross Wars also did not do well in Japan, but that was mostly saved by the merchandise and manga, which was something us Americans did not get. With that out of the way, let's get into a quick rundown of what happens in the season. Oh wait, seasons? Yeah, we'll get into that mess a bit later. Digimon Fusion stars Mikey Kudo, who's a kid who loves basketball. He's got two friends, Angie and Jeremy. One day, a bunch of glitches happen in the real world, and they get sent into the digital world by Omnimon. They meet a red lizard named Shoutmon who wants to be king of the digital world. He's got a couple of friends being terrorized by the Bargra army. Mikey uses his recently acquired fusion loader and digifuses Shoutmon and his group to defeat foes. They realize the digital world is made up of different zones, and whoever has every zone's code crown will rule the digital world. They form the fusion fighters and fight back. There's also rival armies, such as Blue Flare, led by a kid named Christopher and his Greymon and male Bertramon to fuse Metal Greymon, and the other being Midnight, led by a girl named Nene and her Theramon and Monotamon. They unknowingly work for Bargra. Speaking of the Bargra army, there's the titular leader, Bargramon, and his four, shortly later, three officers, Tactomon, Laylamon, and Blastmon. Greymon originally was the fourth member, but died and came back as Beelzemon and joined Fusion Fighters. There's also Axnaimon, who is Bargra's brother and supervises over Team Midnight. The first 30 episodes of the show is the first story arc of the season. Every 2 to 3 episodes consist of the Fusion Fighters entering a Bargra-occupied zone, defeating that zone's leader, recruiting 1 or 2 new Digimon to their army, and getting that zone's code crown, occasionally battling their rivals for the next 30 episodes. Towards the end of the arc, Nene breaks free of Bargra's control and joins Mikey's team. After episode 29, Mikey, Angie, and Jeremy are forced back into the real world, which is the same day they left to go to the digital world. The next day, Tactomon attacks the real world, and thanks to Omnimon, Mikey digivolves Shoutmon into Omni-Shoutmon and kills Tactomon. Mikey returns to the digital world by himself and begins the second story arc. The second story arc, otherwise known as the Dark Terminals arc, Mikey reunites with his group and Nene. Shortly later, Christopher joins the Fusion Fighters, rebranding themselves as the Fusion Fighters United Army. The next 2 to 3 episodes of the 24 episodes in the arc consists of the trio going to different zones, this time fighting one of the 7 Dark Generals working for Bargra. Additionally, Midnight has a new leader, Ewan, Nene's younger brother, and his equally brainwashed partner, Damimon, and tries to stop the army. Eventually, they break free of his curse, and Damimon dies, only to come back. Because fuck you. Towards the end of the arc, Bargramon's ultimate plan, D5, comes to fruition, where he plans to destroy the real world and uses his brother to create Mega Darkness Bargramon. Even though his Japanese name jumps to Mega, but this is America, we let things bigger. There's a big battle in the streets of Tokyo where Shoutmon Type 7 Superior Mode impales Bargramon with his microphone, and all the Digimon return to the digital world with Shoutmon now their king. There is one more arc in the season, but I'll get to that in the end. Now I kinda breezed through this season's story, and that's because there's not much to talk about. Digimon Fusion is a fine season. It's not the best season, but it's certainly not the worst. And that's one of the problems with this season. There's nothing stand out to talk about, either story or characters. Plus, the story of how Nickelodeon almost ruined all interest in this series in America is honestly more interesting to talk about than the season itself. But I guess I should bring up some things I liked and disliked. I'll go over a handful of characters that stood out to me, so I won't be discussing them all. Mikey was an okay leader. He was smart, thoughtful, and wanted to do the right thing. I like how his character flaw is that he's too trustworthy, even if it leads to questionable decisions. Like in one episode, he tries to befriend Lucamon. Lucamon! The digital world's equivalent of Lucifer! The devil! Another episode, he agrees to Puppetmon's plans. Puppetmon! A Digimon who literally has a skull on his hat! The Japanese name makes his alignment more obvious because his name is Pinocchomon, named after Pinocchio! A character known for having a nose that grows whenever he lies, and that actually happens in the anime, and Mikey doesn't even acknowledge it. But other than that, Mikey was a good character. Jeremy got botched the most in the English dub. In the original, he was hot-headed and a bit jealous that Mikey was the general of the Fusion Fighters. However, in the English dub, they stripped all of his character and replaced it with being a gamer.
Never put an item in your inventory until you know its capabilities and whether it's safe or not. Every gamer knows that.
Yeah, really cringe. Christopher Aonuma was a fine rival to Mikey. In the first story arc, he was bitter and deadpan, but he lightened up in the second arc. I did like how he had mommy issues and being emotionally manipulated by his father by being a stronger yet selfless fighter was also an interesting character backstory. But we did kind of see this image being forced into having a fixed image based off of family values through both Thomas and Yoshi back at Data Squad. The Amanos unfortunately suffer the same fate. Nene joined Bargra's army because she wanted to protect her brother, and Ewan joined because he didn't have any friends and was manipulated by ex-Nightmon thinking the digital world was a game. Again, we have seen this dynamic of the overprotective elder sibling doing anything to help their younger sibling, primarily with Koji and Koichi's relationship at Frontier, and occasionally with Matt and TK, as well as a little bit of Tai and Kari. I'm not saying that these are bad character backstories or relationships, it's just by that in Season 6, we've seen many conflicts in previous seasons and arguably done better there. Also, I have a feeling the writers had no idea what to do with Nene. In the first arc, she was just there and mysterious. Then in Dark Generals, she's a fashionista that makes costumes and disguises, which comes out of nowhere. Then in Young Hunters, she's both a pop idol and an actress. Like, where the hell did that come from? Shoutmon was cool. Unlike other main Digimon from previous seasons, he was temperamental, but he always had passion of helping others when needed. Even in one episode where he doubts his dreams of being king when the answer comes right up to his face, showing that he needs to stop and think about his actions rather than rushing into the next fight without any precautions. A lot of Bargra's men were stereotypical villain of the weeks that didn't have much character. Even the officers boiled down to Tectomon being the serious one and Blastmon being the dumb one. Laylamon definitely being the best because she did have a personality other than being girl. She also had a rage mode, but that was only used for one episode. Also, she has elastic powers, which again, only shows up for one episode. Knowing me, I'm kinda biased. Some of the Dark Generals had personality, yes, but nothing stood out. Hell, some of them weren't even that evil to begin with. Bargra himself was just evil guy with gruff voice, and ex-Nightmon was the cold guy doing all the hard work. And that's really it for characters. One major problem with Fusion is that there's too many characters. I didn't mention how Darulomon has a netcode for Cutemon. I didn't mention how Ballistamon once worked for Olegmon. I didn't mention Reetmon's backstory and his redemption as Beelzemon. And besides, this isn't even the main topic of this review. If there are two things people want to see in a Digimon season, it's a good story and some good-ass fight scenes. And unfortunately, Fusion falls flat on both ends. Majority of the fights in Fusion, and especially in the second arc, are just still images of the fights you're watching. Personally, I'm not a fan of these fights. I don't get the same feeling when seeing a character get hit when it's just a freeze frame, rather than the animation playing in motion. When I first watched the dub, I thought that this was the English censors removing key frames of fight scenes, and that's why the action was so choppy. But looking at a couple of episodes from the original unedited episodes showed that the fight scenes were always like that. Maybe it was a budget save, so I don't know. What I do know is that the music is great as always. One thing I will admit that the Japanese dub does better than the English dub is the music is awesome. Both the intro and image songs for the season really get the blood going. Sadly, this season does not have end credit songs, which is a bummer. Definitely some highlights include New World, Dark Knight, We Are Crossheart, both the regular and Cross 7 versions, Cross 4 the Guardian, and Evolution and Digicross version Taiki. Now just to get the Shareverse material out of the way before we get to the main event, so skip here if you want to get the brass tacks. As I mentioned in the last video, the Digital World servers first opened on April 8th, 1990, and the events of the first two story arcs happened on the same day and the day after. Shinji also made the Digital Worlds have an accelerated time frame, so the world and its inhabitants would become more active, eventually creating zones based off of different areas. Although how the hell did Christopher and Nene get new clothes and hairstyles due to the accelerated time is beyond me. Shinji also didn't plan human contact with Digimon to happen this soon, but he stuck with it to see how it went. In the anime, Ewan is tricked into working with Team Midnight at a young age, years before the events of the season happen. How would I alter this? Well, it happens shortly after Mikey and the others go to the digital world. They realize that Nene would inevitably defect from their army, so Bargra ordered his brother to trick her brother into believing that this was a game as a backup plan. One of the things that made Digimon so different from Pokemon was how Digimon could evolve more than 2 stages and could even turn back to their older forms. But back in 1990, the level system we're familiar with was not yet established, hence why Mikey has what we consider a Mega level Digimon early on in his journey. Almost all the Digimon in Fusion are classified in their own level, Cross Wars. Even when a Digimon digivolves, it doesn't say they're a Mega or anything like that. Another thing to note was when Beelzemon died, his data was rewritten into becoming an Impmon in 1992. The same Impmon from Tamers. How does he show up in the final battle and again in Young Hunters? He was a ghost! Bargra always confused me, because he was a Digimon, we know he's a Digimon, so why don't they call him Bargramon? Even the Digi-Analyzer refers to him as Lord Bargra. Is this implying he was a human? In the last episode of Young Hunters, it is implied that the old Clockman is Bargra as a human, but it's left ambiguous. So in Shareverse, I took it as my responsibility to say yes, Bargra was once a human and was converted into a Digimon by Shinji. He lost his memory and went mad with power. Bonus points because Shaman was also his son that also lost his memories of being a human. You want to know who the mom is? You don't want to know. Disney Fighting Evolution. I'll reveal it there. Whenever I get to that. As for the final battle with Bargramon and later Quartzmon, the Japanese government interrogated Shinji if this was his doing, but he offered his honest alibi. Unlike his father, Shinji would come to several agreements with the government and would happily cover up all real-world Digimon threats, saying that they were filming a Sentai. This is Japan. Anything goes. Well, that took longer than I expected. I talked about the story, the characters, the fight scenes, the music, and the Shareverse alterations. It's time to get what you're all here for. I mentioned back in my last video how I got my foot in the door to the Digimon community back in 2013. So here's how it happened. Back then, there was no way to watch the anime since it wasn't airing on TV. Sure, I could buy the DVD box sets for each season, which I eventually did, but I was eagerly waiting for the English dub of Cross Wars to come out since I heard about it earlier that year. Then, one late May night, I was on Nicktoons' website for some reason, and I saw Ty's face.
My God! Okay, it's happening! Everybody stay calm! What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Throughout the summer of 2013, almost every night, I watched an episode of Digimon 01, and it was great. And then they aired 02, which was great, until it wasn't. Eventually, this hype would lead into the premiere of Digimon Fusion on Nickelodeon. Ha, yes, Nickelodeon. Or as I like to call them, the Chamber of Tortured Souls. I think we can all agree Nickelodeon shows are awesome, but the channel itself is complete garbage. Let's see all of the sins I can name off the top of my head. Let's see. Airing SpongeBob to the ground and never living up to seasons 1 through 3 standards again. Airing the series finale of Jimmy Neutron before airing a random select of episodes months later, so the final episode was not even a big event. Making Planet Sheen for that matter. Reanimating the Fairly Odd Parents multiple times to the point where the show was literally unrecognizable and nobody noticed or cared when the show finally ended. Shuffling writers around for season 3 of Danny Phantom and canceling the show with a lackluster series finale. Putting the final episodes of Avatar on hiatus for no reason while airing them perfectly fine in other countries. Airing the final season of Legend of Korra on their own website, again for seemingly no reason. Screwing over the Making Fiends creator and her show that she worked so hard on. Both Invader Zim and My 11th Teenage Robot getting cancelled and airing new episodes on Nicktoons years after their cancellation because they weren't good enough. Making the god-awful Monsters vs. Aliens show that destroyed any chance of it becoming a DreamWorks franchise. Hiring creepy sex perverts like John Chris Felucci and Dan Schneider to be higher-ups in the Nickelodeon food chain, and the list goes on and on and on. If you come up to me and ask, "Hey AJ, I have a cool cartoon pilot, who should I pitch it to?" Don't pitch it to Nickelodeon. Just don't. Well, this seems like the perfect place to reintroduce Digimon to America!
I am very happy to be here!
Now, Nickelodeon bought Saban from Disney back in 2011. It was inevitable that Digimon would be next on Nick's radar. Before I talk about the negatives of the dub, there's one positive I want to acknowledge. Solid fucking cast. I don't know how they did it, but this season has a really good lineup of talented voice actors. You have Ben Diskin playing Shoutmon in other roles, Kyle Herbert playing Darulamon and others, Matthew Mercer playing Beelzemon, Vic Mignogna playing Christopher, Patrick Seitz playing Blastmon, Tara Platt playing Mervamon, Sydney Robinson playing Ewan and Laylamon. You also have Digimon dubbed regulars such as Colleen O'Sutherland playing Angie, Melissa Flame playing Nene, Crick Thornton playing Tectomon and X-Nightmon, and Derek Stephen Prince playing Jeremy. But yeah, really great cast. And that's it. The only thing keeping me invested in this season was the voice actors, because everything else was bad. On Saturday, September 7th, 2013, I woke up and I was excited to watch the first episode of Digimon Fusion at 1:30 in the afternoon. Really? The afternoon? Nickelodeon had a morning block full of new episodes. What, you couldn't sacrifice one of the 15 time slots reserved for SpongeBob that morning? But this would soon be the least of my problems as the opening intro played, and I was treated to this season's theme song.
Digifuse!
Okay, look, music in the English dub of Digimon has been hit or miss, especially in their theme songs. The first 2 seasons have been iconic, yet relatively annoying. Tamers is a remix, which is a bit better. Frontier is godlike, and Data Squad is... eh. Now, I'm only addressing this because the Fusion theme song makes me want to never listen to music again. It literally sounds like it was made at the last minute by Big Time Rush, and it could have not been a coincidence that during the commercial break, they played the music video for the final Big Time Rush single in its entirety. They had to have known. And plus, the song doesn't even flow right. It just goes all over the place while a robotic voice occasionally goes, Digimon, Digimon. I should also bring up the music in the season and how it's the same bland and generic guitar riffs that you would hear in the Neo Saban era of Power Rangers. Yeah, nothing special or interesting. But going back to the theme song, this makes the Digi-Rap sound like Mozart. No joke, I'd rather listen to the 4Kids pirate rap from One Piece on a 1-hour loop. And speaking of 4Kids One Piece, let's talk about the censorship. It comes to no one's surprise that a lot of English dubs of children's anime had to be censored here in the West. Honestly, Digimon got the least amount of edits out of the bunch. It wasn't afraid to let audiences know that the show takes place in another country that's not the United States. Sure, they had to cut a few punches here and there, but it wasn't too extreme. Digimon Fusion, on the other hand, oh boy, Episode 1. They changed all of Trumon's guns to water pistols, they reduced Leilamon's boob size, which was expected, but how can it be worse, you say? How can you consider this English dub to be worse than 4Kids One Piece? These edits are the same issues that dub also had. Well, dear viewer, they decide to censor Lilymon. Lilymon! A character who has appeared in previous seasons and didn't need to be censored. And only now they decide to censor her for no reason. I guess the censors realized this was a dumb idea because in subsequent episodes, she's not censored anymore. Then what was the point of censoring her in the first place? Episode 2 doesn't have any problems, but Episode 3 happens. Now, Episode 3 is one of the most important episodes of the show. It introduces Christopher and Nene and their respective armies. Shaman times 4 is properly fused. Bargramon and the officers are also introduced. Mikey learns about code crowns, and the Fusion Fighters are founded. This episode is really important because it sets up the stakes, conflicts, rivals, and structure of the season for the next 30 episodes. How does Nickelodeon screw this up? I get ready to watch the show, and the intro to the first episode starts playing. Okay, maybe they will play this intro at the beginning of every episode, much like how the Japanese dub has a stock 15-second intro before the theme song. But then Mikey wakes up from his dream. He plays basketball. He sees glitches. No, this can't be. I shut the TV off, and I wait until the commercial break ended to turn the TV back on. Mikey's meeting Shoutmon and fighting Mad Leomon. No, no, no! The TV guide literally said this would be a new episode! I sulk in my room, completely numb. They aired the first episode by mistake. Okay, well, surely next week they would air the third episode for real. There was only one problem. Every year, Nickelodeon holds an event called the Worldwide Day of Play, where they cut all programming from their channels for 3 hours to encourage kids to go outside and touch grass. They hold this event on a Saturday from 12 PM to 3 PM. And now you see the problem. The third episode of Fusion didn't air because it couldn't air. And you think maybe Nickelodeon realized this problem and maybe pushed Digimon's time slot to before the event? No! Why would they care? This show wasn't getting any attention because they placed it in a horrible time slot where nobody could watch it. Plus, it barely, if any, had promotions of the show to begin with. I had to wait 2 weeks just to watch the third episode. At this point, I have already entered hell, and my descent to madness has only begun. After the third episode, Nickelodeon realized Digimon wasn't doing too hot. Gee, I wonder why. And so, they decided to air the show onto Nicktoons. Honestly, it was for the best, because hey, maybe the show could get a new time slot. And they did. Digimon Fusion would air on Nicktoons at 11:30 in the morning on a Sunday. Okay, what the hell is this? Why are you airing it on a Sunday? Kids won't be around to watch it. They have things to do, places to be. Airing it on a Sunday will only lower ratings. What, just because this show aired on Sundays in Japan? Well, guess what?
This is America.
We do things different here. Us Americans have 2 days off from school rather than the one in Japan. What's worse is that Nicktoons is not a cable channel. Again, lowering viewership for your show. You are literally drowning the show before it could even swim, Nick. So, whatever. I just had to get used to it. A couple of episodes go by, and then Nickelodeon decides to do something with Digimon. Wow, what a concept! They held an election where viewers can vote on which show will release a new episode early, Fusion or Rob Dyrdek's World Grinders. Thankfully, Digimon did win out, so I got a free episode. Although I have to wonder if Rob Dyrdek ever found out he lost a rigged election to a fictional red lizard man with a microphone. But this was the only time Nick did something with the show. For fuck's sakes, even Disney, who would later be embarrassed of owning Saban, even they had interesting commercials and events for reruns of the older seasons. Speaking of the older seasons, let's check back in on how the reruns were doing. They recently finished airing 02, which was great because now I could watch a much better season, right? Except that day never came. They aired a handful of episodes of 01, and then again for 02. And then Digimon never aired again on Nicktoons. Are you fucking kidding me? You're not even going to try and air Tamers, which is considered to be the best season of the show? What about Frontier or Data Squad? Especially the latter because that show didn't get any airtime on Jetix. Now before anybody says, well they didn't air those seasons because they were either made or supervised by Disney. I call bullshit on that because I distinctly remember Nickelodeon airing Power Ranger seasons during the Disney era, as well as referencing characters and story elements from that era in recent seasons. So don't tell me they didn't have the rights to air Tamers, Frontier, or Data Squad. Anyway, back to Fusion. Another highlight of the ridiculous censorship comes to us in episodes 10 and 11. When these two episodes came out in Japan, they aired them back to back in a 1-hour special. So do you think maybe Nickelodeon would do the same thing? No, of course not! I had to wait a week to see the second half of the event, because here at Nickelodeon, no fun is allowed! But there are two things in the censoring department that have become infamous. The first is with the character Beastmon. And you want to talk about how inconsistent the censors are? They censored her design because she shows too much tongue, and they gave her a stuffy bra to cover up her cleavage. But sometimes the bra's red, sometimes yellow, and if you're really lucky, you can find it orange. The other one is when Angie uses the Zone's code crown to slash Leilamon's face. In the Japanese dub, she gets a cut on her cheek and bleeds. So, for the English dub, what do you think they do? Do they keep the footage the way it is? Do they fill in the red with black to make it look like a mark? Or maybe they make it look like a bruise? The answer? None of the above. Instead, they remove the cut and replace it with nothing. Nothing! So what it looks like in the English dub is that Angie missed and she got lucky that the wind just so happened to knock Leilamon over. And before you say, oh, well maybe the DVD restores the cut, because joke's on you, this is footage from the DVD. But there's an even worse censorship of the violence later on in the season, so I'll wait until we get there. But this was how every Sunday at 11:30 AM was like, until we come across the Monotamon Impossible incident. Now the episode itself is nothing to write home about. Jeremy tries to rescue Babamon, who he thinks is a princess rather than an old lady, as well as Nene officially joining the Fusion Fighters. So what makes this episode so special? How about this was the last episode to air for almost 2 months? That's right, Nickelodeon pulled the show off the air without any warning, and they wouldn't say for how long. But this is where things go from stupid to ludicrous. You see, the episode aired perfectly fine. In the UK. That's right, the episode aired the following week in the United Kingdom, while us Yanks had to wait 7 weeks just to watch it. Sure, the episode after didn't air the following week, but you wanna know what they did do? The week after, they had the remaining episodes of the arc air on a daily basis, bringing back to the days of Fox Kids. By the end of the week, the British got to see the end of the arc, while we had to wait over a month just to catch up. And it wasn't like the dub of Fusion was any different, it was the same dub with the American cast. And when we did get the episodes aired over here, they decided to air the episodes 2 back to back. On one hand, that sounds great, because you get 2 episodes every week. But if you look into it, you'll see a hidden truth. Nickelodeon wanted to get rid of this show as quickly as possible, hence why they were airing more episodes at once. They saw the show as a failure, but they couldn't cancel the show. They still had the rest of the season to air, plus Saban had already dubbed the Dark Generals arc anyway. Anyway, episode 27. It's a fun episode, yes, but Angie says something that's unforgivable.
Wow! Look at all that Japanese writing!
You don't know Japanese. You don't know Japanese.
Angie? Do I have to remind you that you're Japanese? Jeremy's Japanese! You literally live in Japan, and both of you have Japanese last names! Did the writers just forget what show they were dubbing? Did they just forget the nationality of these characters and where their show originated from? I honestly can't believe I go up to people and say, yeah, I watch English dubs over subs, when this is one of the shows I watch! You see, this is one of the reasons why I call this season the worst English dub to any anime. Now don't get me wrong, there are other quote-unquote bad dubs, one of which being Ghost Stories, but with that, the writers for the dub and voice actors were having fun, making this generic children's anime about hunting ghosts become one of the raunchiest and most obscene dubs ever made. And it worked.
I really did love the guy. And the hot, sweaty, wall-slamming sex we used to have, wow!
Even 4Kids had fun with their dub of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. I don't have to bring up this guy again, do I?
I gotta go potty!
And even with their dub of One Piece was sort of interesting. changing guns to water pistols, changing wine to grape juice, changing a gun to whatever the hell this is supposed to be, and even altering the story to absurd levels. Like if I told you in the 4Kids dub, Orlong doesn't kill Bellamere, but locks her up in his prison, you would want to see that, since it completely changes Nami's character, and how they never rescue Bellamere in the end because, again, she's technically alive in the dub. But Digimon Fusion is the worst kind of dub, because there's nothing to work with. There's nothing interesting to talk about when it comes to the censorship or changes in the dub. It mostly sticks to the Japanese script, which is fine, but when it tries to do something more American...
You don't know Jap.
Nope, we are not doing this again! One more change I want to address is when Tectomon invades the real world and the trio meets Omnimon and... Okay, I'm gonna give you 2 seconds to look at 2 images and tell me what's wrong with one of them. Where's his codpiece? Seriously, in every season we have seen Omnimon, he was fine! They didn't need to censor his codpiece before, so why now? Anyway, Mikey defeats Tectomon, again censoring some parts of the fight, and returns to the digital world, which ends Season 1. According to the English dub. There are a couple of things I want to address before getting into the Dark General's arc. While America waited for the arc to come out, we got a new Digimon game. One thing I will admit as a fan is that Digimon games are a mixed bag, and Pokemon has the better games. But one of the more cherished Digimon games are the Rumble Arena titles. Sure, it's a Smash clone, but it has its own interesting mechanics that has left a cult following. So Namco Bandai realized they should make a follow-up, especially since Smash 4 was on the horizon. And so we got Digimon All-Stars Rumble Arena, which, no joke, is one of the worst games I've played. It's called All-Star Rumble Arena, and we only get 12 characters. Only 12! Half of whom were from 01. They couldn't add Patamon or Palamon either? None of the fan-favorite Digimon appear in the game. There's no characters to represent Frontier or Data Squad. Some of the Digivolutions are baffling, like Tamer's Impmon's second Digivolution is Shoutmon times 5B, Biomon's second form is Examon, Tentomon's second form is Tyrant Kabuterimon, why not Hercules Kabuterimon? Better yet, Gatomon's second form is also Exmon? Magna Germon is in the game's files. She has a model used for cutscenes. Why didn't they use that? The game is a generic and bland 3D arena fighter, losing all charm from the original games. Yeah, and now you see why this game wasn't released nor made in Japan. And on a personal note, I ordered the PS3 version of the game and got the Xbox 360 version. A red flag indeed. There was also a toy line for the dub that came out based off of Shoutmon x 4 and Metal Greymon, however these toys did not sell at all, and I remember seeing them at Target's clearance in November of 2013, 2 months after the show aired. There was also a mobile game where you needed the trading cards just to play, but neither of these did well and they dissolved by 2014. Another thing I want to address is the Cross Wars manga. While it never came out in America, there are translated scans that you could find online. And honestly, the manga improves upon the anime by a lot. Both Angie and Jeremy get fusion loaders at the start rather than at the last second in Hunters, and even have their own partners from the army. The manga also gives more screen time to Blue Flare, which builds upon the characters of Greymon and Male Bergermon. We get a backstory for Bargra and a motivation for why the way he is. Replacing Human is Nene's younger sister, Katone. Ever wonder why Shaman x 5 jumps to x 7? Well, because Shaman x 6 is in the manga. Matter of fact, Ballistamon, Starmon, Drullamon, and Sparamon all get Digivolutions in the manga, which is something that they really needed in the anime. Even Nene gets a manga-exclusive partner named Shademon, who she fuses herself with, Strange Journey style. Am I saying read the manga instead of watch the anime? Not really. I recommend giving the manga a read, but also watch the anime for further context, especially since the second half of the manga is completely different. Also, fair warning, the manga really likes to show a lot of skin, and even a bath scene featuring Nene, who, may I remind you, is definitely underage. So...
Why don't you have a seat right over there?
Yeah, read that under your own judgment. One thing to acknowledge is something that I have been building up to till now, and that's calling the first story arc Season 1, and that's what it's labeled under my DVD box set. Ah yes, I get to talk about these things. For the record, Digimon DVD sets are definitely not the best. If they were produced by somebody else like Shout Factory, then yeah, they would be better. In fact, they did do the Tri and Last Evolution Blu-rays, and also Evangelion, ironically enough. So, as you can see, this is Digimon Tamer's box set. It has 8 discs, each of them have around 7 to 8 episodes, and it's just nice to have all of them in one place. Unfortunately, it's just the English dub, but hey, it's better than nothing, and it's better than just buying it legally instead of watching it illegally and all that shit. But you also get a character booklet that goes over everyone's Digivolution forms, and ignore this, I was 14 when I made these edits, so yeah. But again, you could find all this information on the wiki, but hey, at least they tried. And then we get to Digimon Fusion. Now as you can see, it says Season 1. Where's Season 2, you may ask? Here it is. Yeah, I couldn't find Season 2's box set anywhere. It's extremely hard to find, and it's out of print. But now we get to the fucking DVD. So this one has a slipcase, which is... I mean, it's a slipcase, I don't know what you want me to say. But instead of having 8 discs, you only get 6 discs that have 5 episodes. And it only covers the first 30 episodes, obviously. And it's a guide booklet, the same thing as the other seasons, but again, it's only like the first half of the show, so it's not going to cover a lot. Now, the most infuriating thing about this is that this box set came out in 2016. The show was over by this point, so my question is, why didn't you just put both seasons into one box set rather than splitting them into 2 different box sets? So really, this is what your Digimon Fusion box set is going to look like, Seasons 1 and Season 2. Yeah, it's going to take up more space, and it's just completely unnecessary. So my question is, why didn't they just do it? Well, here's my theory. I have been bringing up all the unnecessary censorship that was completely non-existent in the past. Well, I believe Saban is not at fault here. I think all the changes, censoring the crap out of the show, and even splitting the show into 2 mini-seasons, was done by Nickelodeon. I think they ordered Saban to do a dub of Cross Wars, but they gave him a list of what they need to change in order to fill out the requirements for the show to air on the channel. This includes censoring anything and everything that could be considered lewd. Stick to the Japanese script as much as possible, but not make it too Japanese. Cut corners over every fight scene, even if they're still images. And split the season into 2 seasons for seemingly no reason. Where do I get this evidence from? Because they did the same thing with Power Rangers Samurai. They mostly stick to the original Sentai script, and most importantly, was split into 2 20-episode seasons rather than the one 40-episode season the show was used to, something that they haven't recovered since. And if you compare these censorship to the Disney seasons of Digimon, they didn't care. Rosemon's cleavage was hanging out, Kazumon was never censored once, and the fights were more explicit, and not a single person complained. I'm telling you, Nick's the culprits for this dub, and the reason why they softened a lot of the Dark Generals arc. I guess I've been delaying this too much. Time to get into Season 2, and reach the final level of this madhouse. Digimon Season 2 would finally air in the United States, and I want you to guess how long they waited until airing this season. 4 months? Maybe 6. How about 9 months? Almost a year later and the show gets to continue. Why the long wait? The show wasn't getting any new viewers, so what was stopping you from getting rid of the show as soon as possible? There were 2 commercials for the season. One was like a parody of those pet service ads of Mervamon talking about abused Digimon, which, okay. The other was a weird commercial that felt like the Fresh Prince opening, recapping the first season, but in the style of a Western. And the last thing you want to do is mix the Fresh Prince and Westerns because you get the Wild Wild West, and nobody wants that. So, Season 2 begins, and as expected, 2 episodes per week, which at this point, I just didn't care. But when Christopher digivolves Greymon into Zeke Greymon for the first time, this really ticked me off. In the original sub, Christopher gets hit by a huge rock and his face is covered in blood. Hell, during the transformation sequence, they add in the blood to show an extra bit of detail. In the English dub, no blood, nothing! This kid got hit in the face with a rock and he's not even phased. And yes, I am aware that they removed the shot of Christopher getting hit by the rock, but again, it feels so choppy that you're definitely missing something from this episode. And besides, the quote-unquote marks and bruises that they give to Christopher, most of it is covered by his face and hair, so you can't even see it. Now, why am I making such a big deal about this? Well, it's because Nicktoons already aired an anime that has a lot of fight scenes, and didn't really censor them all that much. It was a pretty obscure anime. I don't know, I mean, you may have not have heard of it. It was a little known anime called Dragon Ball! You might have heard of it! Yeah. Back in 2010, when Toonami was still off the air, Nickelodeon bought the rights to Dragon Ball Z Kai, an official abridged version of the original show. And you know what? This show was barely touched by Nick. All of the action was there, some blood had to be removed, sure, but other than that, it was the real deal. They acknowledged people died in this dub, unlike the other dimension days of the Saban Ocean dub. Not only that, they aired the History of Trunks special, which features Gohan getting brutally murdered by the androids. They also aired Dragon Ball GT in its entirety and some of the Dragon Ball Z movies. These were the same Funimation dubs that aired on Toonami in the mid-2000s, with the grunge rock music and everything. You might be thinking, oh well, maybe they aired the more lighter movies. Well, from my memory, they aired both Cooler movies, BoJack Unleashed, Fusion Reborn, and all 3 Broly movies. So with all of that in mind, Nickelodeon was totally fine airing Dragon Ball on Nicktoons, the show that features this, and most importantly, this guy, but a lady getting a cut on her cheek and a kid bleeding from his head.
No, unacceptable.
Even Nickelodeon's own show Korra features a suicide bomber, and they don't sugarcoat it either. So how is this okay, but this isn't? At least in later episodes, they do give Mikey and the others some bruises, but again, who cares? It's so inconsistent and out of place. Another thing the dub does, which confused me at first, was some of the names to variations. There are some characters in the show, primarily the Dark Generals, who have variations, and they have the blandest names possible. They call it Darkness Mode, and they're numbered. I thought this was like an English dub change, but no, that's what they're called in the original dub. How lazy can these writers get? What, are we just going to retroactively rename the modes from previous seasons now? Is Gallantmon Crimson Mode just Gallantmon Mode 2? Is Imperial Dramon Paladin Mode Imperial Dramon Mode 3? Is Lusamon Chaos Mode now Lusamon Wild Mode 1? Oh wait, they actually did that. Yeah, in the Sky Zone episodes, they gave Lusamon's variations a new name even though he already had an English name for both forms. Why didn't they just use those names? It's not like the names Chaos or Shadowlord was anything demonic unlike its Japanese counterparts, so what was the problem? Also, when Mikey and Christopher fused their Digivolve Digimon to make Shoutmon DX, they never explained what the DX means. I know in Japan it means double cross, but what about the American name? Double times? Double fuse? Deluxe? Director's cut? Also, I could have been officially crazy by this point, but I could have sworn they called Yuan Yu, his Japanese name, at least once.
Amano, you.
I swear, Nick didn't care at all with this season. This story arc is known for the show becoming hyper-lewd with the introduction to the character Mervamon, and her being censored is something everyone expected. Although a lot of people kind of overreact to the censorship because honestly, it's fine. She still shows a good amount of skin. But then there's Laylamon Combined, and well, just look at her. How are you gonna censor that? Well, Saban and Nick did their best to work around it, and I may be in the minority saying this, but I kind of prefer the censored design. I'm not kidding, I do think this is a better design and not goofy looking, which was probably the intent. But at this point, the dub has rotted my brain, I don't care. There's just one problem. If this is supposed to be a fusion of Laylamon, Blastmon, and 3 Vilemons, where are the Vilemons? I mean, in the original dub, they were, well, there. Are you saying you couldn't put their faces somewhere else? I mean, I could do it for you. Here, here, and here. Or hell, make it one face. Because it seems to me that this is a fusion between Laylamon and Blastmon, well, we already have that as Evil Beast Laylamon. Again, if they placed the Vilemon somewhere, it would have worked better. When I was finding clips for this review, I found so many shots from the dub where they forgot to censor things that are normally censored. How do you miss to cover up Laylamon's cleavage when it takes up a corner of the screen? Twice in the same episode! And even in Zeke Greymon's first Digivolution scene, they kept some of the cuts and red marks from Christopher's body. How do you miss this? Was there no quality control with this season? Or at this point did they stop caring? Also, I have to bring this up somewhere in the review. In the next episode, I shit you not, there's a post-production sound effect that features the wah 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 sound effect. Is this actually in a Digimon season? Am I going insane? Did I just imagine that sound effect? Because I'm literally going off my rocker. My god. I'm starting to regret being a Digimon fan. By now, I just want this season to end. I had been burned and infuriated so many times, nothing matters anymore. But oh no, Nickelodeon wanted to prolong my suffering even further. It had one final cruel trick up its sleeve. On Easter Sunday, they aired 3 episodes this week, an Easter miracle if you will. By this pace, the Dark Journal arc could have been done in 6 weeks. We're halfway there. So, the next week, I go on the TV and begin to watch the next 2 episodes. Only to be greeted with nothing. Maybe next week. Nope. Nor the next. Nor the next. By this point, I was done with Nickelodeon. If they want to play the waiting game, so be it. Shortly after, I shifted my attention to other things, such as 2 amazing anime series, becoming a Fire Emblem and Xenoblade fan, and seeing a movie that, quote, destroyed the series, even though it didn't. Perhaps you could say Terminator wasn't the only franchise Viacom ruined in 2015. The point is, the show was not on my mind. Until one day in late July, I was on Tumblr for some reason and searching under the Digimon Fusion tab. I noticed screen caps from episodes I didn't see yet. No, they didn't just air the episodes without warning anyone. Again, they seriously would not pull the same move twice, would they? Oh, but they did! Without any ads or announcements, Nick aired the remaining episodes of the arc without anyone noticing.
Boiling point!
I said to myself, if Nickelodeon doesn't care about its viewers, I'm not going to care about them. I had given up all faith in the channel, and I watched the rest of the season online. And just to make things even longer, remember how in Easter they aired 3 episodes rather than 2? Well, because the final episode had to air on its own because the penultimate episode aired with the third to last episode the previous week. Oh, but Ewan's Digi-Analyzer changed colors from purple to yellow. That's something, right? Right? At this point, I just wanted Shoutmon to kill his dad and go home. I have never felt more joy than seeing the kanji "the end." This fucking nightmare was over. And I don't give 2 shits they never dubbed Young Hunters. But, because I brought it up, I'll briefly go over the final arc of the season. So, this arc was never released outside of Japan, and when Crunchyroll got a hold of it, they said, yeah, we're keeping this subbed. A lot of people consider this arc to be its own season, but because it doesn't reach the 50 episode quota, I'm still keeping it a part of Season 6. This arc is the most distant of the 3 since it happens 1 year after the final battle, but in Sheriff's it's only 1 month. Mikey is not our main character, but some wannabe named Tageru. And that's one of the reasons why most people consider Young Hunters as a different season because of the new protagonist. No. Tageru sucks. He just steals Mikey's spotlight and pretends to be the main hero, when he's not. Jesus Christ, you're literally making Davis look good. And I fucking hate Davis. Our new trio is wrapped up with Ewan, but it doesn't do much because again, Taiki steals everything. Would have been nice to have Ewan, show how he's changed since being under Barger's control. Much like 02, every episode is formulaic. Someone is getting harassed by a Digimon, and Tageru and the others have to solve the problem. Apparently there's a gathering of other hunters, but it's barely the topic for a story arc called Young Hunters. These episodes are very different from the other seasons because it feels out of place. If this was something like Ghost Game, for example, then maybe the structure would work, but definitely not here. There's also rivals that occasionally show up, but the rivals here suck. I mean, I guess it's cool that the main rival, Ryuma, is the one responsible for working with Quartzmon, but the fact he only does this just so he can be just like Mikey in the first 2 story arcs just makes this thing feel like a whole big vanity project / fanfiction. Great, now we have 2 wannabe Mikeys. Nothing in this arc stands out. Well, except for Chohikimon, but I mean, she's a fucking pig. I would like to fuck a pig. The one thing people remember from this arc was the big crossover. This was made during Digimon's 15-year anniversary, and the anime celebrates this with the leaders from all 6 seasons teaming up to take down one big threat. On paper, this should sound like Digimon's Forever Red, but in execution, it's Digimon's Legendary Battle. A bunch of legacy characters show up, but not doing anything. In fact, they're just still imagers and silhouetted anyway. Imagine if we saw Justaimon team up with Angemon and Angelwomon. That would be the tits on the dick. The only characters that were not the leaders that appeared in this event, save for Ken, Matt, and Koji needed for their leaders' ultimate forms, was Mimi and Rika. And my only guess for these choices was Mimi's Japanese voice actress did a lot of songs for the anime, and Rika was there because, well, take a guess. But again, they don't do anything. A lot of people theorized why Hunters did not get a dub was because of the big crossovers, how they want to get all the English voice actors to reprise their roles. I can agree with this because people do not want to see a repeat of Turtles Forever with union issues and everything. Anyway, the crossover ends with the leaders saying how awesome Tageru is. Yeah, not one for the history books, I'll tell ya. Now, how does this event transpire in Shareverse? Especially because all the Digimon seasons, save for 02, take place in their own universe in the anime. Since this takes place 1 month after Barger's defeat, Shinji began to look into how long he would keep the digital world, and continue to use kids and teenagers as test subjects because it worked so well before. Around this point, a witness to both the fights with Tectomon and Bargra, Ryuma connected the dots that Shinji was the one responsible for their creations, since he lived right near his office. He then asked him if he could be just like Mikey in saving the world, and Shinji saw this as a perfect opportunity to test out his new contraption. He wanted to further see what was in store for him and used the Digimon Quartzmon as a way to temporarily create time holes. Afterwards, he then agreed to Ryoma that he would be the one to take all the blame for Quartzmon for a large amount of yen, causing a ripple effect of all Digimon leaders for the next decade to defeat Quartzmon. This would be the beginning of Shinji's decade of misery. Afterwards, everybody returned to their time period, except there was a hitchhiker by accident. Ryo Akiyama was just a normal kid in 1990 that got sucked in 1996 alongside his family, the year the events of Zero One transpired. This leads into the WonderSwan games where he meets up with Mondo Dramon and the Ichijoji brothers. Realizing he helps the defeat of the D Reaper in 1992, Ryo successfully returns to 1990 to close the time loop and waiting for the chance to return to the digital world whenever that opportunity comes. He eventually becomes a modern myth to kids, calling him the Digimon King. Shinji was completely floored with how strong Ryo's bond was with Digimon, not knowing he spent years with them in the future, and he kept a close eye on him. And that's the end of Digimon Fusion. All of it. After Fusion ended in 2015, Digimon did get better in America. The video games, especially the Cyber Sleuth duology, had become cult classics. The trading card game has recently got a resurgence and is doing well. And the Digivolving figurines did well enough. In 2016, the Digimon Tri-movies all got English dub as well as Last Evolution, and only now has the anime began to bring back an English dub with the announcement of an Adventure 2020 dub. As of making this video, there are 2 other seasons that are exclusive to Japan, but hey, it means Season 6 as a whole did not kill the franchise. If there's one question I must ask is, was Digimon Fusion the show that Nickelodeon screwed over the most? And honestly, no. There were definitely other shows that got a poor treatment, but I will say, Nickelodeon used every one of their tricks to prevent this show from being a success. Poor time slots, unnecessarily long hiatuses, moving the show to Nicktoons for even lower ratings, not airing the correct episodes, airing episodes first in other countries and later in America. They pulled all their stops with this show, and I think it's because of this experience, we haven't gotten another English dub of a season for this long. From what I've heard, there's speculation that the dub will be moving to Cartoon Network, where they have their own SpongeBob problem in the form of Teen Titans Go. As for the season itself, well, it's the Adventure reboot, which I heard is bad. Good luck with that, Cartoon Network. So that was my long TED Talk on Digimon Fusion. But on the bright side, it's nothing but uphill from here. Kind of. Anyway, the next video will be me reviewing Digimon Frontier, my 3rd favorite season of the show, and the one I have the most connection towards. Subscribe to the channel to get ready for that, and help support the channel, and just spread the channel and its awareness, and all these reviews. Just spread the awareness, but until then, I'm AJ, and I'll see you all in the next one.